ABC News claimed that Congress has done more to curtail Trump authority than expanded in an August 4 article. The article discussed a few examples of Congress curtailing President Donald Trump's authority, including the recent passage of a Sanctions Act on Iran, North Korea, and Russia that included limits on Trump's ability to roll them back in the future. Verdict. True. The Daily Caller News Foundation analyzed every bill enacted by the current session of Congress. The analysis demonstrates that Congress has indeed done more to curtail Trump's authority than expand it. Fact check. The DCNF compiled a list of all 45 public laws passed by the current 150th session of Congress. This session of Congress has not yet passed any private laws. Of these 45 acts of Congress, the first, the Talent Act, was signed into law by President Barack Obama during his last day in office. The DCNF accordingly excluded the Talent Act from its analysis. The DCNF then evaluated each act individually to determine which ones, if any, altered the Trump executive branch's authority compared to that of previous administrations. Most of these acts neither expanded nor curtailed Trump's authority. House Resolution H.R. 609, for instance, renamed Pennsylvania Veteran Affairs Medical Center as the Abby Abraham VA Clinic. Similarly, Senate Bill S. 305 encourages the display of the flag on National Vietnam War Veterans Day. Neither of these sort of bills alters what Trump and the government he commands can do. The DCNF then filtered this list down to the acts that materially expanded or curtailed the executive branch's authority. As it relates to this analysis, the DCNF considered an act material if it affected the range of all possible actions the executive branch can undertake at its will. Examples of acts that immaterially expanded the executive branch's reach and resources include S. 442, Congress $20 billion allocation for NASA to send astronauts to Mars. Another example is H.R. 1238, or the Securing Our Agriculture and Food Act. The act committed the Department of Homeland Security's DHS to securing American food supplies from terrorism, codifying DHS's authority to do something it already expends significant resources doing. Both acts increased the executive's reach or resources, but neither expanded the universe of possible actions Trump can take. The DCNF's analysis identified and deemed 11 acts as having materially altered the executive branch's authority. The acts were then categorized into two groups: acts that materially expanded and acts that materially curtailed the executive's authority and resources. The ABC News article, for instance, underscored how Congress has curtailed the Trump federal government's regulatory reach and powers over the economy. The DCNF identified about a dozen acts that had the primary purpose of deregulation. About half of them materially cut back the executive branch's reach. Acts of deregulation that materially curtailed federal authority include acts such as Joint House Resolution H.J. 38. The act nullified the Obama-era Stream Protection Rule, a controversial environmental regulation that has been criticized as federal overreach. Legislation that has materially empowered Trump. S. 84 exempted Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis from National Security Act of 1947 to be appointed Secretary. S. 544 expanded Veterans Affairs Rule to also cover veterans' medical costs of non-service-related disabilities. H.J. 99 extended congressional appropriations to federal agencies to prevent partial government shutdown. H.R. 244 provided appropriations for most federal agencies through fiscal year 2017. S. 1094 expanded VA managers' powers to fire employees and expanded whistleblower protections. Legislation that has materially curtailed Trump. H.J. 41 scrapped certain anti-corruption regulations that require disclosing certain types of foreign payments. H.J. 38 tossed out the Stream Protection Rule. S.J. 34 backtracked certain privacy regulations on certain telecommunications providers. H.J. 67 scrapped certain regulations on retirement savings plans. S. 496 gutted some transportation planning regulations. H.R. 366 standardized protocol for the Department of Homeland Security's vehicle management. H.R. 3364 enacted sanctions with limitations on executive modifications. An example of legislation that materially expanded the executive branch's authority and resources is S. 84, which exempted Mattis from a National Security Act of 1947 provision prohibiting anyone less than 7 years out of active service in the armed forces from being appointed Secretary of Defense. The last and only other time that Congress made such an exemption was in 1950, United Press International reports. It did so again in 2017 by passing S. 84 and, in the process, empowering Trump to effectively override existing legal limitations on the presidency and appoint the Secretary of Defense of his choice. The DCNF acknowledges that there are possible arguments or contentions about how certain acts are categorized. These considerations aside, the DCNF in total categorized 4 acts of this session of Congress as acts of Congress that materially empowered Trump and 7 acts that materially curtailed Trump, confirming that ABC News' claim is true. Follow Kush on Twitter. Send tips to email. Protected content created by the Daily Caller News Foundation is available without charge to any eligible news publisher that can provide a large audience. For licensing opportunities of our original content, please contact Email Protected. Tags: Check Your Fact, Congress, Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan.